Rank is literally around the corner, and today we're gonna go over all the best decks that you could be playing for this metagame. Now, we pulled out basically what's being successful in tournament runs, right? We do have Baxcalibur sitting in 1, we have Greninja Mega Altaria sitting in 2, and third place we have Magnezone, we call it Bellibolt, and then fourth, Bellibolt Zeraora. So, those two decks kind of clash in with each other. We could definitely go more in depth when we get to these two decks. Um, but in general, when they do play each other, the Magnezone variant does have the higher advantage playing against the Zeraora build, and yeah, vice versa. But like what I'm gonna say is the Zeraora deck is super nasty when it comes playing, the rest of the meta. So over the weekend and the last week, we did see a high rise of the Bellibolt decks and different variants. But let's start off the video with this deck right here, the Dark Ping deck. So that being said, this deck has made the greatest comeback of all time. It plays well into many of the top decks right now. Just the fact that you could use Greninja, Ping everywhere, even though Poncho definitely is a real card. This deck gets out Greninja out pretty fast. You have Chingling to stop, Baxcalibur or any other rare candy plays. You do have Darkrai pinging everywhere, and then the deck is really solid, really consistent. You do have the Absol as one of your main attackers to get rid of hand size and just pop off. The deck has like a new inclusion of inflatable boat, just so we could get rid of Froakie on the starting line. So, the reason you don't play X Speed because the existence of Chingling, you don't want to use, get locked out of your cards and not be able to use your X Speed when, you could just use a Pokemon tool. So, next up, we do have this fighting deck right here that I would recommend. Only reason I'm recommending this because there is going to be a lot of electric decks, and this is going to be one of those decks that could counter the metagame. Um, Not only this won a 200-person event last week, and this deck is pretty strong. I wouldn't call it the most consistent deck, but it is like if you're seeing a bracket full of Bellibolt electric, I think this is one of the best ways to go. Even Primate taking care of all the Oricorios, and you're just doing an additional 20 to electric Pokemon, and Mega Lopunny just closing out games. You're using double will, so you're gonna be guaranteed 90. With the confusion, which is really good in this situation. So the deck performs really well. Yeah, you're gonna have to high roll with your flips, but at the same time, it puts massive amount of damage super fast. And I'm just gonna say, do not sleep on this deck. Next up, we do have Meowscarada. So I feel like this Meowscarada deck is gonna perform a lot better on the rank versus on a what do you call it, tournament setting. Uh, you could just it's very unique in the sense that it is going to be a bunch of best of ones, and there are going to be players that probably never really played against this deck too much. So you have to know how to use your flower trick when it's useful while building out your back row, and you have to use it in a way to make to apply extra pressure on your opponent and to make sure you could just pop off. The regular Meowscarada is super strong in today's format because you're pushing for 130 damage on just itself, and it has 140 HP. And not only that, you could abuse the Leaf Cape and Lucky Ice Pop. Um, Mesagoza could definitely help you with your consistency, like finding the right Meowscarada you want, because you're always going to start off with your basic starter Pokemon for this one. So Arvin is a good tool to tech in to search either Lucky Ice Pop or any of the item cards. Rare Candy is going to be one of those cards that you want to search. And worst case scenario, you just get like a Leaf Cape or a Rocky Helmet. Arvin stocks I feel like are going to go high. Next up, we gotta go and talk about the Mega Altaria. Mega Altaria and Gourgeist has been super strong for in the last set, in the last rank season. Heck, this deck got me really far, and the fact that Gourgeist is just proving to be super dominant in these last couple of days, I would recommend running Gourgeist. Gourgeist takes care of Oricorio. It just puts 70 on anything, and it has a nice 110 HP. Not only that, you do use Training Arena, so Gourgeist could be hitting for 80. You have Sabrina to push for game. You have Jirachi to control the field, and Chingling is always controlling the pace of the game as well. So that's something you don't want to ignore because it's always super good to have on your side. Next up, we do have Suicune EX with Chien-Pao Baxcalibur. This deck is super popular. Like, it took over Suicune Greninja. I'm not saying Suicune Greninja is bad, but like this is the more popular build. It just Baxcalibur allows you to get your Pokemon online to attack as fast as possible. Granted, it is just a reprint of like the Gardevoir that we got from Genetic Apex, but it's a water type, so and it attacks for 90, which is pretty good to get rid of Oricorio. And then Chien-Pao could push for game, attacking the back row for 130, and you could easily ramp up energy with Baxcalibur. It's so good. Guzma is a nice tech, I feel like, that you guys should be playing. It's just overall like a card that's not being played in this meta, and I would recommend. It's really like it's insane. So there are a couple ways you could build this deck. You could go super offensive or super like healing, right? So Irida and Giant Cape. You could play double cape instead of one inflatable boat, but the boat is just there just in case if you start the fridge, because you definitely want Suicune in the front so you could get your draw engine started as fast as possible. Starting planes will definitely make your Chien-Pao live longer. Just overall, it's a strong pick, and I'm saying Guzma is gonna be one of those cards that should be played because definitely you do not know what's going to be popping up on the ladder this season. The next deck I want to talk about is Altaria Greninja. Solid deck, hasn't changed at all, and is still one of the best heavy hitters around. And just in general, it's super strong, it's super consistent, and it works. It just goes fast. You got Licia thinning out your deck. You play double Copycat to take advantage of all the backs players because they are always going to have a full hand, and you want to take advantage of that. Training Arena, of course, so you could attack for higher numbers. Just having Greninja and Altaria, you're essentially hitting for 150, which is kind of insane. So, the deck is still out here, still popular, still winning tournaments. I would recommend this deck is in your rotation. Next up, we can't sleep on Hydreigon. Yes, it has been getting less play, but at the same time, it's still a high roll deck. It's still strong. People are probably still gonna complain about it once they see it on the ladder, but overall, the Poison Barb and the Hellego combo still reigns supreme over the other builds. So I'd recommend giving this a test, and once you see more electric decks, I feel like this has a good matchup into the electric decks because you're just pushing for a massive amount of damage. You could poison any other Mega Pokemon, any other EX Pokemon, putting Pokemon in a kill range for Absol. The 80 damage. So it's not that bad, not that bad at all. Next up, let's talk about the Zeraora build. So we do have Zeraora and Bellibolt. So in this variant, Protective Poncho is definitely going to be one of those cards that are definitely going to be seeing more play here. Just putting the Poncho on the Tadpole is going to be very, very crucial because Chien-Pao is a real card. Granted, it's just overall the best pick. I will say, over the heavy helmet. Heavy helmet's good, but at the same time, you don't want to, get get a Bellibolt, with 130 damage before it goes in. You want to at least attack twice with Bellibolt successfully before, it gets knocked out. We do have the one Ori because it's super strong. A lot of people do not prepare for the Oricorio, and Oricorio is just one of those cards you have to respect. If you do not, build your deck around it, it's just gonna be over. Electric Generator to boost up your energy. You got Ice Pop, Sabrina, Copycats. Overall, solid deck, and I would recommend you guys use this. And then we have the very popular build, Magnezone Bellibolt. So this deck right here is just overall strong. In this variant, using Mesagoza is to help the consistency of finding the Magneton pieces or Magnezone. Just because, like, yeah, you have the Clement and the Alicias, but this deck kind of still suffers from the Magnezone, like actually finding it sometimes here and there, and just having the extra Bellibolt at one and Tadpole, the 1/1 line is pretty good. You do play one Oricorio. It's basically having the Oricorio. The best way I could explain this is more like of a chump check, per se, but it's definitely good to have. But overall, Magnezone does Magnezone things, Oricorio does Oricorio things. It's just literally Mag Ori with the 1/1 Bellibolt line, and pretty much it. I would recommend you guys run this deck run these decks if you guys want to have success on the ladder. I'm probably gonna be running these decks as well. But if anything, we'll see you next time for rank.